All right, you're watching DefenseReview.com. I'm back with Dave Pavlik of New Defions, Arsenal Democracy, and he's going to just take us through the high-end guns that they have here at Glocks, Blackside Glocks, and what's this first one that we're looking at? Glock 17, obviously.
So it's similar in size to a Glock 17, but that's where a lot of the similarities stop. It is Glock-compatible, but the frame itself is something that we're OEMing through Lone Wolf. It's their Timberwolf frame, similar to what some other companies are doing in their pistols that they have out. And so this frame, in our opinion, a bit stiffer, certainly a different angle. You and I commented on that. It is a much different angle than an OEM Glock, much more 1911-like. It has a full 1913 Picatinny dust cover on the bottom instead of the single slit Glock rail. The polymer itself is stiffer. We've done a lot of work with polymer before, and just working with it extensively, we found that there's a lot less flex to it. It is a much stiffer polymer. There's less flex in it, and we found it to be just a lot stiffer overall and truer too. Most OEM Glocks, you'll notice, we talked about it, the actual dust cover itself, we'll say 8 out of 10 of them are touching the slide itself, because as they pull it out of the injection mold, you'll notice the bottom of the frame itself is curved. We haven't found one that come like that in this frame. We're running a stainless steel slide that we then cut with our Blackside cuts and then put our treatment on it. That's, again, patent pending stuff. We're waiting on the actual patent award within the next few months. We run silencer coat barrels and Trijicon suppressor height sights on this. And you and I touched briefly, all of our Blackside pistols, our OEM pistols, are going to come outfitted now with our new switch trigger, and we think it makes all the difference in the world in that 1911 like feel. And everyone talks about the gold standard of pistols being the 1911. Maybe not, if you're a realist, maybe not in reliability, but certainly in shootability and feel. And that's what we feel like we have with this pistol. We've kind of brought the two of those together.
Now this one does not have your magwell on it.
It doesn't. The frame itself has kind of a built-in magwell the way it is. It is funneled to kind of incorporate that, and it does have a couple other features other than the 1911, or excuse me, 1913 dust cover. It has a built-in
beaver tail,
which you like very much.
Yeah,
I do too. Anyone that's ever gotten slide bite, even from a Glock, they know that it's the worst thing ever, especially if you're shooting high volume. So,
and this is a very nicely designed beaver tail, by the way.
We think so. It was a little more squared off from OEM. We took off. We just wanted to make it where it is exactly what you needed and nothing you didn't, and that's the whole concept behind a lot of our design.
Minimalism.
We talked about the maritime capability of this pistol. All of our pistols come with the maritime cups installed so that this can be shot and cycle underwater as long as you're using ball ammunition. If you're going to be using strictly land-based, then you're going to be more effective with some of the new hollow point ammunition out there. But if you're going to shoot it underwater, wear ear pro, because most people don't realize shooting guns underwater is actually extremely loud, and use ball ammunition, so they won't expand inside the barrel before it has a chance to travel 1 to 1.5 meters before the track completely gets pushed off to the side. We also talked about we don't use captured springs on these. We actually use an uncaptured spring. Again, I hate to bring it up, but very similar to a 1911. We use a Wolf spring, Wolf guide rod, and this is actually a polymer shock buffer, if you will, to take up some of the pounding you might experience from super high volume fire. Most people may not realize this, but ammunition used by the U.S. military, full power ammunition, 9mm in particular, is almost considered a plus P. So it is a much different shooting round than, say, Winchester white box or some of the normal plinking 9mm ammo you would pick up. So I myself have shot stuff that I bought in a civilian store and thought something was wrong, or I just got stronger for one day. But when you go back to using that red sealed primer ball 9mm from the U.S. military, you'll realize just how much more power is in that 124 grain round. So we really wanted to protect it from real high volume fire in that case. And this is we want to do the uncaptured because we've had folks who, in a maritime capability, swim into an objective, hit the objective, swim back out, and then once they're back on the sub, the procedure is to disassemble your firearms, field strip them, use your fresh water from the sub desalinates the water, use your hose, your freshwater hose to spray them off, then give them a quick dousing with oil, and then put them back together, and they should be good to go back in the locker. Some pistols out there, some of them are fairly well-known named pistols out there, don't do so well in this respect. There's a couple famous ones that are rusty and brown, and this one does much better in that scenario because we've got, again, our stainless slide. It's Cerakoted on top of the stainless to add insult to injury, and then you can actually take apart this spring and guide rod fairly easily in your hand, and then really get in those nooks and crannies where salt would like to hang out. And the cool thing about it, again, is, what's your cycle rate? I know 1911 shooters who, they shoot 1,000 rounds and they think they should change out the spring. With this, if you wanted to change out your spring, it's as simple as removing the guide rod assembly and putting on a new spring. And it's a much more inexpensive and a much easier PMCS to conduct than changing out the entire guide rod, especially if we're talking about a stainless guide rod.
And it's very easy to do. I saw you do it earlier. It's simple.
Yeah, it maybe takes another couple seconds and a little bit more dexterity than removing a captured guide rod. It's really not as bad as some people make it out to be. And the benefits we talked about in the long run, especially if you're using this for hard use, are a lot better than going with captured.
And by the way, the slide is the frame is this based off a Gen 3 or a Gen 4? What are we looking at here?
So the slide and frame are based off of Generation 3. Generation 3 being, the only way you can really tell would be the mag release, which this is proprietary style mag release, probably closer to Gen 4 in its style, and then the guide rod assembly. So the guide rod assembly and the slide itself are Gen 3 compatible.
Right.
So this really kind of goes
it really
off
is the slide that's the issue. So.
That's really what's going to do it. The only other way I'd be able to tell on a OEM Glock being Gen 3 or Gen 4 would be the mag release. And again, we talked about how this is actually a much more positive design.
Oh, yeah.
The way it drops
nice
a mag.
big button.
It's a nice big button. We chamfer that edge after we stiple it, so there's no snag, and it really rockets that mag out of there. That was I'm holding it actually kind of angled up, and it pushes that out. So once you're in your good position there, it drops that mag right out in your hand.
And you've got some of these cuts in here, and
we do
you've got
dehorn
stippling.
them. We dehorn them even when we do work on OEM Glocks that get sent in. We dehorn that corner. We go slightly higher on our undercuts so that we have a better bore axis for more controllability. And
you've got very, very nice stippling on this, almost like a suede feel.
The stippling we do for this, so some folks are, for example, in our Glock 43 Low Pro, we do our micro stippling. Our micro stippling is done with a CNC cut tip, and it's similar to something like a shark skin. It's excellent for concealed carry. Folks really seem to like it. For something like this, because the polymer is slightly different, we actually stiple it twice. So we stiple it with a micro stippling, and then we go over it again by hand to create something that is a little more suede-like. But like you said, we actually took it over the sink and we wet it down.
No problem.
It's still very grippy and has a lot of the same properties as some of the other.
And it just feels good, because some of us, we don't have tough guy hands. We've got a little softer hands.
Me either. I don't have tough guy hands anymore. And but I do have sweaty hands. My hands get awfully sweaty. So if you're not shooting with gloves, this is the way to go. If you are shooting with gloves, it still engages the calf skin of your gloves really well, or mechanics gloves or anything else. And
that's it. And then it just shows the 43 real quick.
The 43 is it's Glock's single stack pistol. We've figured out ways to enhance it. Aside from the trigger, which I only know of maybe one or two other companies that have adapted their trigger to work with the 43. That was one of the first things we went on because the 43 is one of our most popular mods to make. But other than that, we took off 45-degree angles in order to draw the shooter's eye to the triangular shape of the rear and then the front sight. It takes off a decent amount of weight without actually cutting portholes.
Oh yeah, we should have mentioned that on this one because you can really see it on this gun on the front.
Yep. 45s are a little heavier on that. We've got a little more meat to do it with.
Yeah, it looks really nice. Yeah.
We put forward serrations on our 43 so that you can properly engage and manipulate the slide that way. Again, we talked about dehorning it.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about cutting deep in the undercut, so you get, this is an interesting example because we have a +2 base plate on here, but even if we didn't, you want to get, especially on such a small, short grip like this, if you have large hands, the higher up you can go, aside from it being more controllable, the better you can get a purchase on the gun itself. But we do ship our Glock 43s with an extended base plate from Pierce, which is a +1, to give you that we'll call it a subcompact feel over this ultra compact feel.
Right.
And
you got a Hive on this one.
This one's Hive technology. We actually got several of these in, and so far they are excellent. It gives it a really close to a full-size feel. I don't have the biggest hands in the world, but you can see I've actually got a good amount of grip left on there if I did have some really big, gnarly hands. And again, on our 43, we do things like polish the feed ramp, which you can kind of see on there for enhanced feeding.
Mm-hmm.
And we use Vickers extended slide release and extended magazine release.
Cool.
And this particular one, we added support hand stipling. That's a special request, but it's something we can do obviously very easily. And Trigicon HDs to really be able to dial in and shoot as accurately as you would with a full-size pistol.
Very cool. And this obviously, I mean, but the 43, it comes as, I guess, a Gen 4 or whatever. Yeah.
It does have a dual recoil spring, which is something they really started with their 26 and 27 lines, and then that's kind of proliferated onto their Gen 4. So this would be their Gen 4, their only Gen ultra compact pistol.
So do you do anything with that in terms of the spring, or do you keep it
We
away?
we do polish the spring. We noticed that on Glocks with captured springs, especially the metal ones, there is a good amount of creep. That is typically because it's metal dragging on metal.
Right.
We do polish this up. I'm sure you can see there's a good amount of sheen there. We also button head the firing pin safety itself, because the less angle we have on there, the less of a drag we have on the actual trigger bar as it passes forward to bypass that safety.
So no problem though with that spring.
No problems at all. We've shot everything from the hottest 9mm, which is the Army grade we talked about, all the way down to 147 grain, which would be considered subsonic by some. And for folks who tend to shoot suppressed, there are folks who shoot Glock 43 suppressed. We're using Silencer Co. We do offer a Silencer Co. option for their barrel. The Silencer Co. barrel is threaded, and it comes with a custom piston. Their custom piston they designed for their Omega 9K, and we find that it functions pretty flawlessly. So
Very cool. So
I'll
put
go
it on there.
ahead and get that. Well, if you don't, one problem with these captured springs is if you don't get that perfectly lined up there, you won't be able to necessarily slide it on. But there you go.
There we go. A little tricky.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, so these are the Blackside Glocks, latest and greatest.
Latest and greatest.
Nous, Defions, Arsenal Democracy at SHOT Show 2017. Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
You are watching DefenseReview.com.